кто-то не хочет работать и хочет уйти, никто никого не будет гнобить.
Imagine walking into work after 20 years of loyalty, only to find your locker empty and a piece of paper on your desk. No explanation, no severance, just go home. This is not a scene from the Great Depression. This is Belarus, right now. While the world watches the explosions in Ukraine, a silent economic massacre is taking place just north of the border. Alexander Lukashenko promised his people stability. Instead, he has delivered mass unemployment and total submission to Moscow. The numbers don't lie. Belarusians are being fired at a record pace. The country is emptying out. And the man in charge isn't fixing it. He's selling what's left of the nation to Vladimir Putin. Welcome to the birth of Europe's North Korea. For decades, the social contract in Belarus was simple. You don't have political freedom, but you have a job. You have a salary. You have stability. It was a Soviet-style bargain. But today, that contract has been torn to shreds. I know what you might be thinking. Is it really that bad? Isn't Belarus just quiet? That silence you hear isn't stability, my friends. It's the silence of a graveyard. It's the silence of an economy that has stopped breathing. Charter 97, one of the few remaining independent voices, has just published a report that shatters the regime's propaganda. According to official statistics, yes, even the government's own numbers, the rate of dismissals is outpacing hiring by a terrifying margin. In just 1 month, thousands more people were fired than hired. The industrial giants that Lukashenko boasted about? They are shedding workers like a dying tree sheds leaves in winter. Before we dive into how this economic collapse is forcing Belarus into a dark union with North Korea and Russia, do me a favor. Subscribe to Mr. Warlog. We don't just read the headlines, we read between the lines of the dictator's playbook. Let's look closer at this layoff epidemic. Why is it happening now? The regime will tell you it's optimization. That's a fancy word for we have no money. The sanctions are biting, yes, but the real problem is structural. Belarus has become a warehouse for unsold goods. Think about it. You produce tractors, but your main buyer, Russia, is sanction hit and broke. Your secondary market, Europe, has closed its borders because you keep threatening them with migrants. So the tractors pile up. And when the warehouse is full, you don't need workers. This isn't just about economics, it's about human dignity. In Belarus, losing your job is dangerous. There is a tax on social parasites. Can you believe that? If you are unemployed, the state fines you for not working. It is a trap designed to crush the spirit. But here is the twist. While the Belarusian worker starves, the Belarusian state is being eaten alive by its big brother. The Atlantic Council has released a devastating analysis titled, Minsk in Moscow's Grip. They argue that Russia doesn't need to invade Belarus with tanks. Why would they? They already own it. Putin has achieved soft annexation. Look at the military integration. Russian troops move through Belarus as if it were their own backyard. The ISW, Institute for the Study of War, confirms that Belarus is now fully integrated into Russia's offensive strategy against Ukraine. Lukashenko isn't a president anymore. He is a governor who has to beg the Kremlin for loans just to pay the police who protect him from his own people. I bet you're asking, why doesn't he resist? He can't. He burned his bridges with the West in 2020 when he stole the election and tortured protesters. Now he is trapped in a room with Putin, and Putin has the only key. And when you are trapped, you start making strange friends. Have you noticed the recent headlines? Belarus is getting cozy with North Korea. Anadolu Agency reports that North Korea is ready to respond to threats alongside its partners. Lukashenko is actively courting Pyongyang. Why? Because they are in the same club now, the Pariah Club. This is where the term Europe's North Korea comes from. It's not just an insult, it's a description of reality. Closed borders? Check. Total dependence on a single neighbor? Check. Militarized society? Check. Political prisoners? Check. The regime is building a wall around its people, not to keep enemies out, but to keep reality out. But let's not forget the people. Behind these geopolitical games are real human lives being destroyed. The Human Rights Center Vyasna, Spring '96, documents the horror daily. Torture in prisons is systematic. People are arrested for the color of their socks if they are red and white, the opposition colors. Why does this matter to me, you might say? It matters because this is happening on the border of the European Union. This isn't a distant tragedy. It's a black hole of human rights right next to Poland and Lithuania. The fear is so palpable you can almost smell it. People delete their chat histories before going out. They whisper in their own kitchens. It is the return of the Stalinist terror, updated for the smartphone era. And economically? Belarus has become a parasite attached to a dying host. As Intereconomics explains, the Belarusian economic model was never sustainable. It relied on buying cheap Russian oil, refining it, and selling it to Europe at a profit. But now, Europe isn't buying, and Russia isn't selling cheap oil anymore. It needs every drop for its war. So the model has collapsed. Lukashenko is trying to pivot to China, to Africa, to anyone who will pick up the phone. But you cannot replace the European market with Zimbabwe. The logistics don't work. The money isn't there. So what does he do? He fires the workers. He cuts the social benefits. He squeezes the population to pay for his palace and his riot police. Is there a way out? Meduza published a fascinating interview with Andrei Sannikov, an opposition leader. He argues that Lukashenko is playing a dangerous game with the West. He creates a crisis, like the migrants at the border, then offers to solve it in exchange for sanctions relief. He takes political prisoners just to trade them later. It's the diplomacy of a hostage taker. Pay me, or the hostage gets it. But the West is tired. The bait isn't working like it used to. Poland is building a wall. Lithuania is closing checkpoints. The isolation is becoming physical. But Lukashenko isn't just destroying his economy from the inside. He is trying to blow it up from the borders. We need to talk about the hybrid war he is waging against his neighbors, a strategy that is backfiring spectacularly. Charter 97 reports that illegal border crossing attempts have spiked again. Lukashenko is once again using desperate migrants as biological weapons to pressure Poland and Lithuania. He thinks this will force the EU to negotiate. Instead, it has forced them to build a fortress. Lithuanian Prime Minister Inga Ruginiene issued a warning that sounds like a death sentence for Belarusian logistics. If the situation does not change, we will close the border again. Think about what this means. Belarus is a landlocked country. Its only path to the lucrative Western markets is through Poland and Lithuania. By provoking his neighbors, Lukashenko is literally cementing his own doors shut. 1,000 trucks are stuck at the border right now. That's food rotting, contracts being canceled, and businesses dying. It is an act of economic suicide committed to satisfy a dictator's ego. And while the trucks are stuck, the brains are flying away. For years, Belarus was proud of its high-tech park. It was the Silicon Valley of Eastern Europe. World-class apps like Viber and World of Tanks were born there. It was the one sector that brought in hard currency and wasn't dependent on Russia. Today, that sector is being dismantled, brick by brick. The Ideas Bank Research Center calls this the economy of missed opportunities. Their data is staggering. Over 400,000 Belarusians have fled. But it's not just numbers, it's who they are. The people leaving are the coders, the engineers, the entrepreneurs. They are taking their tax revenue, their spending power, and their future children to Warsaw, Vilnius, and Tbilisi. Why? Because you cannot code with a gun to your head. The KGB raids IT offices. Internet blackouts are common. The regime saw these smart, independent people as a threat, so it drove them out. Now Lukashenko is left with tractor factories that can't sell tractors, while the digital economy that could have saved the country is building GDP for Poland. It is a self-inflicted lobotomy of the nation. So with the economy in ruins and the youth fleeing, how does Lukashenko stay in power? By staging a play and calling it an election. The Guardian describes the recent election perfectly. Stage managed. There were no opposition candidates, no international observers, just a script written in the presidential palace. Western leaders have denounced it as a sham. But for the Belarusian people, it's an insult. They know the real numbers. They know that in 2020, the country voted for change. This lack of legitimacy is the regime's greatest weakness. A leader who is truly loved doesn't need to arrest grandmothers for wearing red and white socks. A leader who won fairly doesn't need 150,000 Russian troops to back him up. Chatham House asks the burning question, when will he step down? The answer is, he can't. He is riding a tiger. If he jumps off, the tiger eats him. If he stays on, the tiger starves to death. He has no exit strategy other than total submission to Putin. There is one final player in this tragedy who is very, very unhappy: China. We often forget that Belarus was supposed to be the hub of China's Belt and Road Initiative to Europe. The massive Great Stone Industrial Park near Minsk was built with Chinese billions. It was supposed to be the gateway to the EU, but a gateway that is constantly closed by border crises is useless. China values stability. Lukashenko offers chaos. By weaponizing the border with migrants, Lukashenko is effectively blocking Chinese goods from reaching Europe. He is biting the hand of the only other superpower that might have supported him. Reports suggest that Beijing is quietly furious. They are shifting their logistics routes to bypass Belarus entirely. The Great Stone Park is turning into a ghost town of empty warehouses. Lukashenko hasn't just lost the West, he is losing the East. Finally, we must look at the psychological state of the nation. Imagine living in a country where law means what the policeman decides today, where a like on social media can get you 5 years in prison. Spring '96 reports that there are still over 1,500 political prisoners rotting in jails. Many are denied medical care. Some haven't been heard from in months. This creates an atmosphere of suffocating fear. It's not just about politics, it's about survival. People stop planning for the future. They stop spending money. They stop having children. This depression of the nation is the final nail in the economic coffin. You cannot build a prosperous economy on fear. Innovation requires freedom. Growth requires optimism. In Belarus, both are illegal. So where does this leave the people of Belarus? They are trapped in a tragic pincer, squeezed by a vindictive dictator at home, and isolated by a war they didn't choose abroad. The mass layoffs we started with, they are just the beginning. As the Russian economy sinks under the weight of the war, it will drag Belarus down with it. There is no safety net. Lukashenko thinks he can survive by clinging to Putin. But history teaches us that when an empire collapses, the vassal states are often the first to burn. Belarus is not just Europe's North Korea. It is a warning. It is what happens when a nation's future is stolen by one man's fear of losing power. What do you think? Can the Belarusian people ever reclaim their country, or is the grip of Moscow too strong? Is there a breaking point for this economy? I really want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. If you found this deep dive into the forgotten front of the European crisis valuable, hit that like button and share this video. The world needs to know what is happening in the heart of Europe. I am Charlie from the Mr. Warlog team. Stay watchful. Thanks for viewing.